If there was a strongest man in the neighborhood contest tomorrow, would you even place in the top 3? We may be a long way removed from the days of working on railroads and factories and on farms, but there is still the desire in every man to be strong. Maybe not the world's strongest man kind of strength, but the kind of strength that enables him to be ready for anything that life throws at him. In today's video, I'm going to break down why powerlifting is the most effective way to develop strength. I'm also going to clear up some misconceptions around what functional truly means and why powerlifting is actually the most functional way to develop strength. Hi, my name is Aaron Kubitz, the founder of Functional Aesthetics of Eau Claire, where I blend science and innovation to help busy guys over 40 build muscle, shed fat, and perform better in their lives inside and outside the gym. In addition to the above topics, today's video is going to also be delving into the muscle growth and strength potential of powerlifting. And I'm going to compare it to various other forms of training, both from a muscle size standpoint and raw strength standpoint. Now, any form of strength training, which would include bodyweight exercises such as push-ups, pull-ups, handstands, etc., bodybuilding, which sometimes includes some of those things, but it's typically done with free weights and a combination of machines as well, done in the moderate to rep range and moderately heavy loading, will build muscle and strength, and Olympic lifting will build strength and explosive speed and power. But powerlifting is the most effective way to develop strength. And I'm going to explain why a little bit later on in the video. Now you might be saying, well, I don't really care about bench pressing, squatting, and deadlifting hundreds of pounds. I just want to look good with my shirt off. And that's fine. But if we want, part of getting that more muscular physique does involve getting stronger. And if you're going to try to get stronger, why not try to do it in the most efficient manner possible? So to make all of this make more sense, let's look at a couple different training styles and compare them to powerlifting. So we're going to start off with the bodybuilding, right? So with bodybuilding, a lot of guys, when they get to the gym, because I'm not advocating that you start off lifting as heavy as possible right off the get-go, but a lot of guys wanting to get bigger and stronger think that the best way to get bigger is to lift as much weight as possible. And there is a correlation between the amount of weight that you're lifting and the size of your muscles. But it's a little bit more complicated than just putting as much weight as you can handle on the bar and lifting it any weight that you can to get the weight up, right? So, whereas in powerlifting, intensity, or the amount of force you're producing, is the biggest driver of strength, the biggest driver of building bigger muscles is not how much weight is on the bar in a given set or rep, but rather the total amount of weight that you lift in the workout. In the words of Ronnie Coleman, building muscle is about lifting the most amount of weight possible for the most amount of reps possible with good form. And that is a perfect description of volume, right? So the total amount of weight that you lift in a workout. You could, for example, deadlift 300 pounds for 5 repetitions. And that would be, let's see how good my math is, maybe that'd be, 1,500 pounds of volume for that set. Or you could take 200 pounds and lift that for 10 repetitions. And that would be 2,000 pounds of volume. So the 200-pound deadlift would have more potential to build muscular size than the 300-pound deadlift, even though the 300-pound deadlift was more intense. It had more weight on there. Now, it is a little bit more nuanced than this because there are multiple things that do build muscle. You ideally want to work in a variety of different rep ranges. But the sweet spot and the place where that makes the most sense to work most of the time for building bigger muscles is in that higher volume range. Now, when it comes to developing strength, though, with a bodybuilding thing, and this is why a lot of guys say, well, these bodybuilders, they're big, but they're not very strong. Now, bodybuilders are very strong compared to the average person and compared to many athletes, but because the way that they train, they don't develop the maximal strength that a powerlifter will. Because strength is a skill, meaning that you have to train your body and your nervous system to get really efficient at utilizing all the muscle available all at once. right? Whereas with bodybuilding or with calisthenics or muscular endurance training, right, where you're trying to do more reps, you have to leave a little gas in the tank so you can accumulate that amount of reps. When you're trying to do a 1 rep max or even lift the weight 5 times, you're not too concerned about how much gas you're leaving in the tank because it's over really fast. Instead, you're worried about how, exerting a lot of force, if not all of the force in your body, all at once. And so for this reason, bodybuilding is not the best for building maximal strength. The other thing is when you're doing, the focus with bodybuilding is also not just on how big the muscles are, but the overall balance of your physique, right? You want to ensure that your chest isn't overpowering your back. Your biceps aren't overpowering your triceps. Your hamstrings or your quads aren't overpowering your hamstrings, and so on and so forth, right? And so because of this, you tend to do more exercises than a power lifter will. You also are working in higher rep ranges to more total volume, which is more fatiguing. So the combination of having more exercises and more total volume, more reps and sets for those exercises, leads to accumulated fatigue over the workout, which decreases the amount of total force that you can put into a rep, right? So you're not training to be brutally strong because there's more of an endurance component in a bodybuilding workout. Now, when we look at Olympic lifting can help you develop more strength. But because the focus is on the rate of force development or how quickly you're moving that weight, and because then you're not going to be able to develop as much strength as with powerlifting. Because with powerlifting, you're not intentionally trying to go slow, but because of how heavy the weight is, you're just not able, nobody's going to be able to fling over their head the same amount of weight that you can just simply lift off the floor, right? Just makes logical sense. So for this reason, Olympic lifting is effective for helping you to get stronger, but it's more so helping you with timing, coordination, mobility, and that speed and power component. Then if we also briefly look at muscular endurance training or the calisthenic style of training, if you compare, gymnastics or calisthenics, there is actually pretty comparable levels of strength that you can develop, provided you are training the right way in your upper body with those style of training. But because it's hard to progressively overload your upper body, like say doing push-ups, right? If you do 100 push-ups, that's not necessarily going to help you to bench press more weight because you're working on your endurance. You're not working on maximal recruitment of all your muscles at once. Can it help you get a little bit stronger? Perhaps, but not to the same degree as actually working on lifting heavier weights. So if we look at Olympic lifting next. Olympic lifting can help you to get stronger, most certainly. But it's almost common sense that it's not going to help you get strong to the same degree that powerlifting will, right? Because nobody can power clean or snatch the same amount that they can deadlift, right? And so for this reason, Olympic lifting is more focused on the rate of force development, developing speed, explosive power, as well as joint mobility and coordination. So it's great for athletes, and this is why many athletes will train with the Olympic lifts, because it helps with that coordination, the triple hip extension that you need for jumping and the running and stuff like that. And then also you need excellent mobility in your hips, knees, and ankles, and even your upper back for doing these lifts. Okay, so briefly we're going to touch on muscular endurance training. How about muscular endurance training? Now, you can get pretty strong doing a lot of push-ups and pull-ups and things like that, right? But at a certain point, if you can do like 100 push-ups, it's not going to really translate over to helping you to get a better bench press, because there's not, at any one point, you're not training the body to maximally recruit all the available muscular force that is present in your chest, your triceps, your shoulders, and then even through your core, right? When you're doing the push-ups, right? So it's good for building the endurance. It can help you to build some muscle. If you're new to lifting, it can help you to get stronger. But if you want to become as strong as possible, then you're going to need to actually lift heavier things that challenge you. And powerlifting, because you have a rack and things like that, it allows you to exert maximal force in a relatively safe environment. You can even set up safety pins. I don't have them on here, but you can set up safety pins so that if you fail a lift, all you have to do is drop it. Or if you have nice mats on the floor, you're doing a squat or something, you're coming up, you can't do it, you just tip it off your back and you're fine, right? Whereas if you're lifting a rock, I'm a big fan of doing odd object things. If you're lifting big rocks or something like that, that's actually great for joint mobility. It actually helps your joints feel pretty good because everything is getting stretched out in the odd way you're lifting it. But there's also the risk that you could drop that rock and smash your foot or something like that. It could tip off in a weird sort of direction too. So for this reason, powerlifting is going to be much more efficient. And we're going to talk specifically more about the powerlifting in this next section of this video. All right, the last section of the video, we're going to look at the specifics of powerlifting. And since this video is not just about how to develop strength, but also the best way to develop muscular size, we are going to look at that as well. Now, I didn't really touch too much on the muscular size aspect of some of these other things. With calisthenics, you can develop some pretty decently sized muscles, although most of these guys try to stay a little bit smaller and leaner, just because it's easier to maneuver your body when you are like that, especially in the lower body and the legs. With the Olympic lifting, muscle, because there's not a lot of time under tension, there's not a lot of volume either when you're doing the Olympic lifts. Olympic lifting is probably one of the poorest ways to develop muscular size, although it is great for that speed, power, and to a lesser degree, strength. Okay, so let's look at powerlifting. Obviously, I am advocating that powerlifting is the most efficient way to develop strength. So let's take a look at that first. When you are powerlifting, you're typically, if you have a bench press, you're doing a bench press, right? Now, when you're doing a push-up is a very functional exercise. I like that because, and the reason I say it's functional, and I was talking about what do we mean by functional, right? Now, function, if we just look at it in its purest terms, it means that it is suitable for the designated application of what we're using it for, right? And so if you are, but usually in the fitness context, when we're talking about functional, we're thinking about how does this translate to my day-to-day life? That's what we're talking about. And so when we are, whether or not something translates to sports or to day-to-day life, has more to do with skill and coordination, right? Aspects of things. So if you look at a push-up relative to a bench press, if we're looking in terms of how does this transfer to day-to-day life, where you're going to often be in unstable environments or sports, right? When you're in sports, you're not sitting on a machine all, where everything is perfect, or laying on a bench. You're in a dynamic environment, right? So you need to have strength that also is combined with mobility, coordination, timing, and also speed in many cases, right? And so when you're doing a push-up, you have to, you don't have anything supporting your back, right, or your core here. So when you're doing the push-up, you're not only training the chest, the triceps, and the shoulders, and you're also training your core musculature. Your quadriceps also have to stay tight. Your butt muscles also need to stay relatively tight and braced when you're doing this as well. And so for this reason, when you're doing the push-up, it's a little bit more functional or transferable to day-to-day life. But if we're talking in pure terms of developing strength, then the push-up is not the most functional way to develop strength. The reason being is that you're only as strong as the weakest link, right? And so if you have to worry about stabilizing your core, like you can try to make it harder by stacking plates on your back, but at a certain point, there's only so many plates that you can stack, and then you have the instability thing going on too. Now, you might say, well, that's more functional because you have to work on stabilizing, right? Well, yeah, it's more functional because you have to work for transferable to life in sports because you have to work on the stabilization aspect. But anytime you have to focus on on stabilization, that means that there's extra focus and energy directed away from maximal force production, right? If you are trying to stand on one leg in a canoe and press a bar over your head, I guarantee you're not going to be able to lift as much weight over your head as if you're standing on concrete on two legs, right? So that's the reason why if you're doing a bench press, or you're doing a squat and a rack, right, that having that stable base of support to press off of is going to allow you to deliver more of your strength all at once, and in doing so is going to help you to build more strength. Now, with that being said, there is a relationship between the size of your muscles and your strength potential, right? There are guys that are relatively thin or skinny and stuff, and they are able to lift a lot of weight, right? But if they were bigger and they trained the same way, they would be able to lift even more weight. Now you have a bodybuilder guy, and maybe he can't squat as much as this skinnier powerlifter guy. That doesn't mean that the bodybuilder couldn't squat as much as this other guy if he added in powerlifting training on top of his bodybuilding training. In fact, one of the reasons why in my hybrid strength program, we start out with the muscular endurance training to develop that metabolic efficiency, coordination, and technique. And then we transition into bodybuilding to develop a little bit of, increase the muscle size a little bit more, is because once you have a little bit bigger muscles, it's going to give you more potential and set you up for greater success when you start lifting those heavier weights. So the other thing that bodybuilding does is, that I alluded to earlier in the video, is it helps you to develop a solid base of support in addition, or a more balanced physique as well. And if your physique is balanced, in the long run, you're actually going to be able to become stronger as well, because you won't, if you become too out of balance, your body will actually limit the amount of force you're able to produce with certain muscles to avoid injuring yourself. Kind of neat, right? And then the other thing is when you have the bigger size of the muscle through the bodybuilding, it's going to give you a greater potential to develop strength. And so that is why I do that in the video. So that's all I've got for you guys today. That's why I do that in my program, not in the video. But that's all I've got for you guys today. In next week's video, I'm going to be talking about joint health concerns relative to powerlifting. A lot of times you think about, well, if you're lifting really heavy weights, it's automatically going to be really bad for your joints, and we should be concerned about that. So I'm going to address that in next week's video. But for the time being, I want to know, what are you doing to help ensure that you stay strong, capable, and mobile in your 50s or even your 60s and beyond? Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you all next time for more health and fitness information. If you got a lot of value out of this video, then you might want to subscribe to this channel. Go ahead and hit the button lower right hand corner. Hit the like button if you like the video. I'll see you all next time.